Welcome to another garden vlog, and here's the sunflowers. Got a little bit of coffee here. These are the ones we just sprouted like a week or so ago, so they're growing really fast. I don't know if I mentioned this on the last vlog, but we got a couple discounted. We got a violet de Bordeaux fig here. We got another Olympian hardy fig. It's barely alive, and we got a Chicago hardy fig, which is doing okay. We already had this York elderberry that I think we did talk about on the last one or two garden vlogs. This Black Prince mulberry definitely has growth on it, but we can't forget that mulberries are notorious for putting out growth using their stored energy even when they don't root. This pluot graft from our original pluot or plum cod, I'm kind of thinking this is going to be a plum cod based on the fruit, the way it looks. But it is blooming even on this new graft. This is our original pluot that fell over like sideways last year. And we've been trying to make sure we can have a backup of it. And it is full of flowers. And it actually produced last year like 3 or so pluots or plum cods. Kiefer pear is full of blooms too, which I just wish they were better for fresh eating. Sunflower pawpaw is already getting ready to open those blooms. I mean, they're everywhere starting to open, but the flower is not fully exposed yet. The flowers, I should say. Now, this is the NC1. There's going to be at least 2 flowers there, probably 2 right there, 2 small ones there, three or so on this stick, and another 4 or 5, and possibly some down there. You see how much smaller these flower blooms, they're not near as advanced, as those sunflower pawpaws, so they're later in the season, obviously. IXL we grafted last year has 1, 2, hopefully it's still alive. We'll see if there's any bud swelling or anything. Haven't done a scratch test on it, but kind of looks like it could still be okay. Now this here is that Wasisa, one of the Wasisa mulberries that we grafted. Now it's probably got about 6 inches of growth, so this is probably hopefully over that threshold of where the scion wood uses all its energy and then fails. So I've seen them get like 3 inches of growth sometimes and pretend that they are doing well, with grafts and with rooted, trying to root the cuttings, and then they just die and don't have roots and the graft fails or whatever. So hopefully this is a good sign that this Wasisa mulberry took this graft. Now this guy here, which is a blackbird mulberry that we grafted last year, it was hit or miss because we had freezes that kept killing the buds off, and I was worried that it was going to just kill all the potential buds, but it finally came back. Hopefully we get no bad frosts or freezes. So that is an Australian green, I think. And then this is the other blackbird that we plan to give away to some of the local garden communities or raffle off or something. So it is looking really good. This right here is the blackbird we did last year. So right here is the graft. And about 6-7 foot or so higher is at the top, and it is fruiting. Now we know that a lot of times it's 2 to 3 years after they fruit before they give you the best size, best flavor, everything. So it's hard to tell, but hopefully just because of the massive amount of growth and stuff, we'll get a good sample to see what these guys are. I don't know if they're red, if they're white, something in between. All right, let's see if we can get a better view. We're kind of looking right in the sunlight. Maybe we should do this later in the day, get a little closer in the ladder. Barbados cherry here starting to bloom. We started getting a little bit of rain here and there. We even had like a 3/4 to 1 inch downpour, or it was just off and on throughout the day. We had a bunch of downpours. And so Barbados cherries usually bloom when it's raining, especially when we get a massive amount of rain. Didn't get much, if any, fruit last year. What did we get, 1 or 0? I can't remember. Maybe this year will be a better here. But you know, drought is not good for Barbados cherries. Lots of new growth on the white sapotes, you know, new growth coming out on, you know, pretty much all the mulberries that are still alive. Nice amount of growth on this, what is this, Black Beauty mulberry. So this is our first, you know, it looks like success with black mulberries, grafting them. Still no signs of life on this black Suriname cherry. And I may not try again after this. Ooh, this mini Olatangelo in this totem bed that we did is full of blooms. Smells wonderful around this tree. This other bed that we built and put this blood orange in, you know, it's majorly recovering. Pretty much all these leaves are new, and right there's a sign of a single flower bud. So it may have 0 fruits or 1 or 2. It seems to be just recovering from that winter blast that we had. This little Jabota Kava right here that seemed to be doing really well. Planted at the base of this dead cypress tree, seems to have potentially died, which I don't know why. It was doing really good here. This tropical guava is coming back from the roots. Let's see if we can find that guy right there. That little green right there is coming directly from the trunk. Medlars in bloom in Florida. And this single medlar here has probably got 14 inches of growth since we grafted it a few weeks ago. You know, more blooms on that one there. That guy right there. This guy right here with bloom heads fixing to open on both sides. This is what our kind of stressing blood orange original one looks like now. It took a lot of damage from that cold, but I think it hasn't really been doing very well much anyway. There's some blooms on it, but not at the level that, you know, a healthy tree like this, if it was healthy, I should say, should be putting on. It's always been kind of small, smaller than a lot of the semi-dwarfs. And it could be because it's in shade and root dense areas. So it has never put on a massive amount of blood oranges. But there's a potential bloom. There's about 3 right there. Who knows? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 at that area. There's a couple right there. So we could potentially have between like 5 and 20 blood oranges this year if they don't fall off. Still not a lot for how old this tree is. This is our red navel, and it's kind of in the same boat. It's healthier looking than the blood orange, a little bit more wider, denser, I guess, spread. But the flowers, it's just like the other ones. There's not a lot of flower heads showing up, and I would think I would be able to see almost all of them by now with this amount of new growth. Again, we may only have 5 or 10 or 15 navel oranges too this year. This is that like 17, 18-year-old grapefruit seedling that was producing like amazing fruit. And I don't see right now any signs of blooming. It had like 1 or 2 last year, and they dropped prematurely. So this is not looking good. And again, when they have all this new growth like this, you should be able to see some blooms forming. Give it another week or 2, and then that should tell us. And of course, you don't have to see the blooms. They can bloom, you know, a few here and there, way up at the top or something that you just never see, and then you see fruits. But I would prefer to see a nice, massive amount of flowers on these guys to, you know, to ensure that they will have something. Now this is the Meyer lemon. It took pretty heavy damage, and you know, new growth, no signs of flowers. So this is beginning to be like a bad sign of citrus in general here, because we had 2 years of droughts. Maybe that's what messed it up. Maybe it's not just like citrus greening. And I've been seeing a lot of greened citrus being put for sale like grocery stores, like your tangerines and stuff. They're full of the green still in their peel, which to me means it's probably, there was a video I watched maybe a month or so back about citrus greening, where they're still collecting fruits off the greening trees, and they sometimes let the greening fruit that has the most greening on it just stay on the tree a little bit longer before they pick them. You know, there's a threshold where over here you pick it too soon and it's just horrible and not edible, and over here it's better, and they still sell them. And so greening trees still produce fruit. So this is stress on a different level. Well, here is a single Meyer lemon bud. I'm sure if I go around everywhere looking at every little crevice and area, I'll find more, but that is not near as much as they usually do. Our marsh white grapefruit looks like it's gonna be blooming probably like crazy, like it's old faithful, I guess you would say. That's just a blooming machine for always producing a lot of fruit. Our citramella, I did notice some blooms on it, so it didn't produce any fruit last year. It's probably going to produce some this year, but a lot of the leaves that are growing on it are last year's leaves, so it hasn't put out too much new growth. Once those new growth leaves come in or start to come in, then they may push out some buds, more flower buds. They should. I just don't know to what extent. We may just have to do a better job at keeping up with the recommended fertilizer, regimen too. Because a lot of times I'm buying like 2 40-pound bags a year, and some of it per inch of trunk or whatever. We probably are not getting all that because we're trying to do compost and a bunch of other things too. It's another day, and I put a lot of these grafts or attempted grafts out in more sunlight. I don't know if you can see it just shining all over here, morning sunlight. But I noticed that one of those Wakisa mulberries, the growth was actually coming from below the graft. So I pinched it off. It's still scratching green there, but I don't have big hopes for that. I think I initially, maybe in the last video or two, said that there's 2 to 3 that look like they're going to take. But now I'm not so sure. Scratching without green means obviously dead, but scratching green still is not a big indicator, because all your buds can die, or there could be just enough energy in that cutting or scion wood piece that still has it green, and you still may not get that callousing and that graft, the rootstock and the scion wood, being connected. You still may not have that success, and it could scratch green for a long time before it just dies. It could be months, just based on my limited experience over the last 2 or 3 years trying to do mulberries and other things. And we took a chance during those frosts and stuff, leaving all the stuff outside. We could have potentially brought them in. It would have been a nightmare, headache, just doing that every year. Just got so tiring. So that can cause, if it doesn't heal or heals at the wrong time, that expansion and stuff of freezing and defrosting and freezing and defrosting, it can cause issues at where the graft is supposed to callus, heal over. And I can't say that I haven't been warned, just from what I've read, that sometimes that freezing weather can mess up your graft. So if that's what caused some of them to fail, then I guess I'm definitely responsible for killing off some of them. Pretty much no sign of life on any of the persimmon grafts that I've done. Haven't pulled back the tape to see if any buds are like green or anything like that. I just kind of did what that local nurseryman told me that, you know, this is why most grafts you don't feed and water them every day. You know, they most likely used, if this guy is true, telling the truth, I should say, you're probably putting diluted fertilizer in their drip system and, you know, watering them every day in the drip system. I'm still not seeing anything. So if I have zero or very bad luck this year, I think I'm probably just going to have to wait and just grow out my seeds, try to get maybe individual plants that are already grafted, hopefully have luck with them, keeping them alive, let them grow out, whether in a pot or the ground, and then collect scion wood at the appropriate time, because what this guy said is completely opposite of what most dormant, you know, plants, fruit trees that go into dormancy are supposed to, you know, it's the wrong time of the year. The rootstock has not budded out yet. It's always exciting to come out, you know, every, you know, late winter, early spring, and look at, you know, the seedling citrus trees and stuff, and that you've planted or that came out, popped up on their own. You know, is this going to be the year that they bloom? For this guy here, even though it's so short, it's been cut down several times over the years, but it still is not looking like it's ready to bloom. Guy here that just came up, popped up on its own around these old banana bushes, or shrubs, or whatever you want to call them. It probably would have been 10 foot. A lot of dieback this winter, but it's definitely coming back from the barn. We're coming back to the other side of it. Anywhere there's new growth, just looking to see if any flower heads are forming. Little tiny circles. They'll pop up a little tiny green circle, and, you know, they'll expand a little bit and get a little bit wider. And so far, I see nothing. This guy has to be close to the range of maturity. It just not quite. Maybe next year. We have some that are just underneath a pile of elderberries, where we have our wheelchair ramp, and, you know, all of our flowers on the ramp. They're definitely big leafed, kind of like a grapefruit or something. But those guys probably are getting stunted growth from having that massive amount of shade. So we probably should dig them up and put them in more sunny locations. And we have this one here, which was probably about 9 foot. Probably, if it's in like the orange or something range of stuff versus grapefruit or pomelo, it has to be close to being mature. And we're looking at the new growth here and not really seeing those any of those little balls that would indicate getting ready to flower. Looking at these cocktail grapefruits too, doesn't look like any sign of blooms forming. I think these were planted as seeds like 2018, 2019. So being that they're hybrids, probably just nowhere near the age they need to be. What is that, a pomelo and a mandarin hybrid or something? So pomelos, I would assume, would be you know, I think I read somewhere can be like 5 to 20 years or so supposedly to mature. Mandarin's probably less, I don't know, so we might still have a little while on these guys. This one's a new one to me, because I don't know, I got so much sun glare, but there is a skink right there in the water, just soaking. We've had so much drought, I guess, that there maybe just such a lack of water in the puddles and everywhere. Check that out. Just laying right in that water here. Well, this guy here, which is different than this side, is a delightful cultivar. I forgot all about having another one that I've attempted to graft, and seems like it's succeeded there. It's got a lot of nice growth. I only grafted one side of this like 2 big branch seedling here, but it kind of reminds me of the Morris Niagara Black Beauty that I just recently grafted. The leaves look very similar. Like right there's the Black Beauty, and here is the Delightful. Similar shapes there of leaves. They even, they have that kind of other shaped leaf here randomly. They look almost alike. So I just looked a few minutes ago to make sure that I didn't mislabel something. And I realized I got Black Beauty, the Morris Niagara, from Fruitwood Nursery, and I got Delightful probably a few weeks or so apart from, I think, Ding Dong's Garden. So the 2 completely different nurseries that we would not have, mislabeled anything, because they would not have been on any kind of grafting table or anything. There would have been no way for those to cross unless somebody else at one of these other nurseries mislabeled them. So that is very interesting. Looks like the dormancy on these American persimmon seedlings are just now starting to break. So much later than, when we actually got those scion pieces to try to graft with. Well, it's been a few days since we videoed in this video, and I thought I seen something here with this persimmon. Look at that new growth. But when I checked it out, that's actually on the rootstock side of this whip and tongue graft, unfortunately. Now there could possibly be a little green bud there, or maybe somewhere in here that pops out, but it's impossible to tell until you see something actually coming out. There's a bud, I think, at the top here. Now, this coffee cake also seems to have just a little bit of that, like, bud swelling, but you can't tell if it's green or if it's old. There's one there, at least one right there. And that could be it. That could be just 2 buds on that one. It's definitely like pushing out. You can see it. But is it still alive after how many weeks or whatever? And then we have this Garrettson. And I can see where there used to be buds here, like right there. It looks like it's like indented in and kind of black. So that's probably an indicator that them buds are surefire dead. There's another one right here somewhere. Again, that definitely is not looking good. It's got some growth from the rootstock down here though. This double graft is also hard to tell. I can't tell if the bud right there, or where is it at, like right here, is viable, because the tape is just being a little bit too cloudy. But there does seem to be moisture inside of the tape, which I don't know, that might be a bad sign that we didn't get it weatherproofed enough. Still seeing like no clear signs. Is that a bud at the top on this other one? It's hard to tell. This is another Garrettson here. And yeah, hard to tell. That's obviously a bud there. Is it halfway dried out? I mean, I don't see an indicator of a lot of swelling or anything. I think there was a bud right there. But it looks more brown than green. What I do know is that the majority of the American persimmon seedlings that I've got from rootstock and from seeds are either not pushing out any growth at all, or very tiny tip of leaf coming out the top. Almost all of my Asian persimmons, at least all of them that have been in the ground for 2-3 years or more, have leafed out. The 2 that I grafted from that same stock that is not quite woken up yet are not showing any signs of life yet. I hope that they're not dead, because I had 2 successful grafts last year, And I'm wondering if it's, you know, like the northern versus southern chromosome American persimmon rootstock that could be an issue, or at least making them wake up later. I was around here a few minutes ago and I thought this guy here was a goner. This is the Suriname black cherry. He might be coming back from just the lowest part of the trunk, almost like 2 inches up, but that tells me it's alive. It's still up in the air whether or not this 4-in-1 or 5-in-1 graft has taken at least on 4 of them. I'm pretty sure, and this is the mulberry that we did. I'm pretty sure that little side graft did not make it, so I'm gonna call it a 4-in-1. This is the one that's questionable. Possibly some swelling at that bud, possibly still alive. This guy's tricky because it goes so far down the scion wood, but that's the actual piece of scion wood because there is the end of it. So like 3-4 inches from the top portion, this is the wasisa or wakisa, and we thought we had like 3 of them grafted. One of them probably failed. The other one may or may not come out. Probably failed, so we may only just have this one, and this guy's probably 12 to 13 inches, so it's probably past that point of, you know, failing, unless it got like a big freeze or something. So far, this is a wasisa or wakisa, Italian, and this little guy, and it could still fail, but it looks like it's got 2 nice buds popping out there. And this is the Pakistan. Well, it looks like our Gerber daisies here are fixing to do another round of flowers. Now, we collected some coffee, some lemonade, some tea. Looks like sweet tea from McDonald's there, see? It'd be nice if we could ferment this, you know, with our fermenting juice, but we're just going to use this with some water to feed those persimmons and anything there or grafting to try to give it a little boost. It has to have some level of nutrients in it, you know, the coffee and all especially. So let's go back to those persimmons we were talking about, you know, this whole experiment about, yeah, it was the time a few weeks ago to graft according to this nurseryman that has supposedly been doing it with almost 100% success rate. You know, I can only hold out a little bit of hope, thinking that maybe when the rootstocks start waking up a little better, that there is a possibility, probably not a huge potential, that, you know, some of these guys will take. But, you know, almost everybody else that has done, whether through small level commercial activity or large level, seems to think you need those rootstocks to be woken up before you graft. Now, one of the things that I talked about over the last video or two was whether or not we'd have another surprise like plant material order. I can't say for sure that we won't, but I think that here's why I haven't done it. See that on my arm? I've been having these gout flare-ups that started on my foot, moved up to my knee, and now it's in my wrist area. And a lot of people that have gout never have it in the wrist, and a lot of doctors don't even know that it can go there. I had to go to, like 20 years ago, an ortho that dealt with a lot of, you know, arthritis and gout and different things like that. And it was only then that he said, yeah, and he said like 40% of your blood work doesn't even show the high uric acid levels when you're under a gout attack. So yes, I've had multiple blood work, you know, done where the uric acid was really high, and then there was 1 or 2 where, or at least 2 that said it wasn't. But I think even when that stuff, you know, your uric acid passes through your bloodstream, there's still a lot of residual pain And yeah, it's going on. It's probably 3 months, probably fixing to go on the 4-month mark. And I had to fight my insurance company to pay for colchicine, which is a anti-inflammatory specifically for gout, because I could not take indomethacin. And now I just started taking prednisone, so you might have to have a combination of 3 or 4 different things to try to figure it out, and drink a lot of water, which I fail to do a lot of times. I think I drank about over 100 ounces of water yesterday. I was so happy to see that the vanilla persimmon that we did last year's pushing buds out, leafing out there. I thought maybe it wasn't going to make it. And this Collier mulberry, you know, it just had a little bit of grain down there, you know, a week or 2 back. I'm like, is it, you know, I thought for a while, is it going to make it? But it's finally starting to push some growth out. It's done pretty good. It's in the shade, so it's probably not going to grow as fast. This Emmeline's purple fig that I rooted, you know, last year, 6 months ago, I don't know. It's doing fantastic. It looks like I do have some plastic grafting tape that I wrapped around it instead of just parafilm, so I'm going to have to cut that off before it girdles it too bad. But it looks good. Southern queen pear finally leafed out. It took a while. No flowers of it looks like this season. This Tice mulberry that I grafted last year, wow, it's putting on a lot of growth. So I got to make sure it doesn't pop at the graft. I might have to stake it before it gets too much more, you know, winds and all that stuff. And them big old giant leaves on it are going to carry a lot of weight and, you know, wind power pushing against the graft. And this pear, you know, we probably lost the tag years and years ago. Don't know what it is. I think we talked, I don't know if it was on this video or the last one, that it's basically dying. It's dry, you know, there's not a lot of green under the bark, hardly anywhere. There's enough obviously to flower and leaf out, but it seems to be slowly just withering away. So we took a healthy stem and grafted it onto a root sucker, and look at that, just to try to salvage it. It'll be interesting to see if it has any fruit, you know, before it, you know, because it's the Orient pear about 20 foot away is in flower too, so it might actually fruit, and maybe we can identify it if it does, instead of having to wait another 6-8 years or whatever for this little guy here to start doing something. And this Korean mulberry here, oh, I need to zoom out some. It's full of little fruits and stuff. Third attempt to do it. I think I did a grafted one and then a pre-rooted one. None of them survived, and that one is just on its own roots there. So let's hope we make it happy this time. I'll also say about that pear there that we just rooted, that we just grafted. I was going to do multiples, but this here, let's gout flare up. I could barely graft that one. It looks like it took. I was going to do 2 or 3 more cuttings to try to assure us that we would have a backup, but it's already leafed out pretty good. I mean, you could take the leaves off, wrap it. Hopefully there's more buds in there, but it could there's still a lower take rate when the scion wood is already leafed out like that, I think. But at least we seem to have one backup. I just looked briefly at the other persimmon that I grafted. It's scratching green, but there's no sign of like major bud swelling or leafing out yet. So hopefully in the next couple weeks, this is in a little bit more shade than the other one. So hopefully, yeah. At this very moment, I'm kind of most disappointed that the D-More 9 mulberries that I grafted are not looking very promising. One of them looks like it's potentially dead. The other has a little bit of green in it, but it has brown too. It's like it's browning, and then there's a slight bit of green at the tip. But you know, I really don't know what to think about that. I don't know how many I was able to graft on that because I used pretty small pieces. I may have stuck one in a pot. I may have grafted one that I forgot where I put. I do not know. But the D-More 9 isn't the most readily available, and isn't the cheapest to acquire. A couple websites sell them, but they usually have an opening at one time a year. Then they may close it, a few days, a week later. And if they have excess materials, they may reopen for orders, and then that's it. So here's that Christmas loquat, and I told you guys not long ago that it looked like it was going to bloom again. It bloomed basically throughout all those winter frosts and all, but there's like one single fruit. Let's see if I can find it right there that might be growing. It's going to be a really late loquat. And these are going to be even later. We shouldn't have any freezes, I would think, that would destroy that last little bit, but we'll see. Yeah, this soft closing was a really long soft closing of the season. Is this our last video, or are we going to do like an update? This kind of put the nail in the coffin here for getting that order, because we could probably still get more scion wood pieces, cuttings and stuff. Not as large of a selection because the most rare, the most in-demand stuff goes fast. But there are still options. However, the survivability for graft takes, cuttings and everything after most scion wood is already awakened and all that good stuff might not be great. I wish that I could say what survived and what didn't during that winter frost, because a lot of things are still looking bad but not dead. A lot of things, or a few things, look dead and just are coming back. So it'll probably be the next garden season whenever we open the garden vlog back up for next season. If we open it up for next season, we can say, here's all the updates. Here how many avocados survived this pretty brutal winter. We had one or two really brutal nights. If this was 1970s, 1980s, it would be normal winter, or even a warmer winter than normal. But we're talking about in the last 20 or so years, these winters like this, these Arctic blasts, have become, I guess, pretty rare. I'm disappointed that the boysenberry, mulberry, 2 times in a row didn't seem to make it to grafts. And again, we got super large cuttings, and we probably should have just put them in a pot to try to root them, because I've not had good luck with large scion wood. Maybe other people have, but not me. Black Beauty and the Cook's Persian mulberries, they're new here. I've never attempted to graft a Persian or Cook's Persian or anything. Now, I know I attempted at least twice on the Black Beauty, maybe 3 times. If I go back, 5 or 6 years or however long, and say I tried to graft mulberries and every single one failed. So there was a point where I failed 100%, then I got like 40%, and now I'm probably 60%, maybe more with ones that are smaller diameter cuttings versus large cuttings, which seem to be about 100% failure with the grafts. So we're basically waiting to see how many avocados survived, how many cuttings survived, how many grafts took, how many jaboticaba survived in the ground. See if anything else that looks dead is going to come back. See if anything that looks alive but stressing is going to make it or die. Yeah, look at this guy here. Another banded border snake. This is one I haven't seen before. He's in shed. See the cloudy eyes there. And I've noticed when I make these beds, these like mycorrhizal aged wood chip alternative beds, that it gives all these wildlife, lizards, snakes and stuff, extra, protection, habitat, home, and as all this stuff breaks down into compost, underneath it actually warms the soil at the same time. So they got a warm spot to get into when it's cold, and they can come out when it's, sunny in the morning and get their sun and have some level of protection from the birds and stuff. And I can tell this guy is not the same one we've seen before, because that, you probably can't get it on picture because it's so dark when I'm looking at the screen, but he's got a full tail, or there could be a young female has a full tail. The other male that I think is a male has a nub tail where a bird or something got it and broke it off. And I've seen our big female twice today around this area here at the end of the wheelchair ramp almost. Don't see her right this second, but too soon. Here she is. Let's see if we can. Oh, there she goes. I don't know if you can see her, but right there, there's her face. We're under a wind advisory, and I have seen some kind of dark clouds earlier. Now they're kind of gray. But according to the Alexa, it's not supposed to rain. Well, these medlars, two different cultivars, are on this loquat, and this loquat has a lot of leaves and all. I think we're going to call it and say most likely they're alive and surviving, not 100% chance. So we need to cut some of this off so that we're letting the roots feed these two guys instead of all this top growth here. If you look right there, there's probably another bud where more leaves can come out, and just in case it wants to bud out. There's one right there too. That may be on the actual scion wood though. Yeah, I think it is. So that's more leaves from the medlar there. Got some positive news. This is a yellow or lemon catlake guava. That's one of my favorites. Even a big tree piece fell on it the other day. Look down there. Two leaves coming out about 4 to 5 inches from the ground. So hopefully this guy will fully recover, maybe after a season or so, and we can have more guavas on. This is one of the red catlays, and there is a bud, or a couple leaves right there fixing to pop out. So it looks like it has been. And this other one has got new growth. This one here in this overgrown area, look at that. Looks like all of them are going to make it. So I've been holding back 2 of these plum and pluot scion wood pieces. I don't know if they're even viable anymore because of my wrist issue. I haven't really been able to find a good spot to graft them to. So we're going to see if I can find some native plums here that I planted before and see if I can graft it to them. So there's a hog plum. Excelsior plum on hog plum. This guy's like taller than me now. It's probably 8.5 feet. And this guy here is probably about 7 feet. And this is the dapple dandy pluot. And this guy here is that maple leaf mulberry graft that I did last season. Look how amazing it is. It's got like 2.5 foot plus growth and starting to bush out a little bit at the top. Well, it's kind of strange because I think I got those hog plums probably about a year apart, maybe. I think I got 2 from a dealer that did a lot of like native flowers and plants. One of them I put, I think, in one of those raised beds, and it did not make it at all. One of them I put there out in wetland zone 1. Then like a year later or so, or a season later, somebody else gave me one, and I planted it out in the wetland zone 1, probably 30 to 40 foot apart. Actually, probably no more than 30. And I couldn't find at least one of them for like a season and a half. And then like 6 months ago or something, I found one of them. I'm like, yeah, it's still alive. And now it's like 7, 8, 9 foot, and the other one is about 7 foot. So they grew amazingly fast once they got out of that first season and a half, where they were just like being covered up with weeds and not doing anything. But once they got that growth mode, they shot up pretty quickly. But since they've been in the refrigerator for maybe 2-3 weeks, a month, maybe more, longer than the other scion wood pieces, and the fact that the hog plums have been well leafed out already for a while, I'm not sure how viable those pieces are. I could have probably did 2 out of one of them, but I know the longer the scion wood, the longer the stick you graft, the more stored energy it has. So the longer it is, the more likely chance you'll get that callus, that healing, and that take, versus doing like a single bud or 2 buds. So I would think that based on the smallest one, there's probably at least 3 to 4 buds, and the other one probably 4 to 5 buds. So you got potential with every bud there. And yeah, we'll just wait and see. I could have did both of them on one of those hog plums because they had multiple, limbs coming up, very bushy, and they all had a diameter that was, thick enough to graft onto. But I did one on one and one on the other plant just to see. And so if these do take, or even if they don't take and the rootstock survives, I'll probably try to graft some more stuff next year, maybe the scarlet plums, and just see how they take that wetlands area with hog plums, which are wet tolerant, just like cherry plums. Our nutrients are going to come from about a couple tablespoons of Epsom salt. We're just putting in here and mixing the water, so it's going to be Epsom salt water for these grafts and attempted grafts, and see if that helps boost these guys. We're still hoping that the persimmons will make it, but we don't know yet. And there's our other bandit water snake there, with that big stub tail there. Looks like he's fixing to go in the shed. So it's another day, and today we got a little bit of lime water and a little bit of coffee. Yesterday it was Epsom salt. So that's today's nutrients for these newly grafted, semi-newly grafted plants. All right, it's another day, and we're hanging a bag of shrimp here to just decomposing right by this pawpaw tree that's starting to bloom really good. That is a sunflower pawpaw, which is reported to be self-pollinating. I've never had fruit or none that hung on long. I have tried once or twice to paintbrush pollinate with a paintbrush. I wish I had some more hangers that would go like beside the tree and really high up, so I can put some rotten meat on every single one that is blooming. But that's the only thing that comes to mind right now. I think I got another little steel ground rod or rebar or something, but it may be too long to try to drive into the ground with my bad wrist. At that very spot, that location, there are 3 pawpaws potentially blooming or fixing to open up those flowers. NC1 sunflower, and I got a couple on the IXL. So yeah, I put it right there at the sunflower because it's considered self-pollinating, even though, like I said, I never had any pollination that occurred just naturally. So they say hang rotten fruit there to attract those carrion flies, carrion beetles, things that like dead things, to drag their butts across those flowers that are, some people consider to smell kind of like putrid or rotten. Haven't really noticed that a lot, when I put my nose up to a flower. But maybe that's an issue, because even though they have that smell to them, it's just not putrid enough. It's not strong enough. So hang that rotten meat and see what happens. It'll be very interesting to see if we actually get a few pawpaws this way. So it's been a day or two since we did any filming on this video, and we ended up getting our air-layered grapefruit back here. The guy we gave it to, he lost a bunch of citrus over this last winter, and he said, he's getting too old, doesn't know if this will survive the winter, doesn't know if he's gonna, be around when this thing fruits. But I do figure it'll fruit in the next year or two, probably, even though it's kind of small, because it's an air layered. It's fully mature already, and it's got a lot of new leaf growth and stuff on it from when I last seen it. So overall it looks pretty good. But he decided he's going to put, I think, the loquat that I gave them, that I grafted a year or two ago on it, or on the ground where this one was going to go. Sorry, my voice is kind of grumbly. I just woke up. So early in the morning, I always got throat issues and, phlegm in my throat and coughing and all that good stuff. Haven't got my coffee in yet, so after that, hopefully things will clear up. So this is from an unknown variety from Texas, one of the sweetest red grapefruits I've ever had. I grew it from a seed, about 20 years ago, the main tree. Goats attacked it. We're very lucky that it's even alive, so we can actually taste the fruit. But now we have this backup, and hopefully we can make some more backups in the future. So I've sort of called this TX-Flo, Texas, Florida Crimson, TX-Flo Crimson. Okay, well, let's have another look at one of these persimmons. That is rootstock. But look at that green bud right there. And then I think there's like 3 of these. Here's another one right there swelling. And I think there's one right here. I'm going to keep this rootstock growth until these push out more. And if this gets too much growth, I'll just trim it and have just a little bit. This is that Brunaquil. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. Persimmon. Oh my gosh, I just made a big mistake when I was trimming that pluot, or that cherry plum that I grafted onto. I actually cut one of my successful grafts that had probably like 2 12-inch growths on it, trying to get some material to root. Here's like a 3-gallon or so container, and I got a bunch of cuttings off of it. But when I was cutting off of that darn tree, I didn't even see the graft on one of them, and poof. So I'm trying to root that piece with the cherry plum directly into the ground somewhere. It's probably not going to work, but just in case, it has a successful graft at the top. And if these guys are easy to root, maybe, just maybe it will take. I don't know. So yeah, we were just snipping because we had a lot of growth up here on this one. And bad wrist and all, I was just reaching around, trying my best and not even paying attention. And I went like below a graft here, and boom. Other than not knowing, losing the tags and not knowing what cultivar, I'm not too worried about it because we got like 5 or 6 grafts on here that have taken. So I ended up putting like a humidity dome over this guy instead of trying to pull all them fragile, leaves off of that new growth and potentially just breaking the graft. It's in pretty good shade here, so hopefully it doesn't roast, but we'll see. Another day, and let's look at this persimmon, this Brunaquil. As you can see, more swelling at the scion wood. Definitely at least 1, if not 2 definitely 2. Possibly on that 3rd bud. And this guy was pushing out more growth, so you can see right there where I pinched it off. This is the rootstock, so I don't want too many leaves coming out there. And once this leaves out, I'll probably just pop those buds that come from the rootstock completely off. But if this is our only success for the season, remember we had 2 last year. If this is the only successful graft on persimmons, then I would say this feeding these rootstocks every day with like a diluted fertilizer, plant food, may not be all it's cracked up to be. It may be more about timing and having the rootstocks leaf out before we put scion wood on here. Now, just because of how long the scion wood has been on here, I would say this is, like I said, a success, because most likely if a scion wood was using its stored energy, it probably would have already failed. But if you really need that timing to be right, I've already proven that in 2 years that you can have some successes. There's a success there. 2 last year. But, you know, you either have to have grafted plants that are healthy and shipped to you or whatever, or go drive, 200 miles or 500 miles to get them if you want to have those varieties, those cultivars that normally aren't available in your area, or you potentially just keep trying like this, or you put the scion wood in the refrigerator for an extra month and a half until the rootstocks actually leaf out. So I got another bag of old shrimp, frozen shrimp here, about 4 or 5 big ones here, or medium-sized ones. And we're gonna put this on top of our pandam pawpaw. So this is probably over 1,000 feet away from that other one, so it's not a big chance that they're gonna pollinate each other, but maybe if there is some level of self-pollination possible, these guys here will help get some of these fruits pollinated, or flowers I should say. So I got it up here maybe about 8 foot in the air. Can't really get at the top unless I get a ladder, but this should be good and stinky in 3 or 4 days, especially with that 80+ degree sun we've been getting here. The sad thing is I have seen fruits hang from this tree. They just fall off prematurely. I mean, probably an inch and a half or so, and then they just disappear. This guy's in a pretty good amount of sun here. Let me back this camera off and see that. That's not really going to shade it except a really early morning sun, and you got most of the day of sun, and you got sun coming all the way down to the west there. Very little shade in the west. Small amount of shade, in the evening. Maybe if we get some higher level of pollination just from those rotten shrimp there, bringing those carrion beetles and flies and stuff in. Maybe we'll actually have some fruit that stays on until the end, but I guess time will tell. None of our other pawpaws around this area, this one or that one, is blooming. I think that guy bloomed last year, had like 2 flowers or 1 flower, but nothing this year. And this guy is a Tennessee mountain seedling, and I had a couple grafts. That's a grafted one there that's leafing out right now. We probably have around 9-10 different genetics in this area, but so many of the pawpaws just failed to get that abundant growth. Some of them are 10-15 years old and still like less than 4 foot tall. One of our original Tennessee mountain seedlings, stayed like that for a long time, 6-8 years, and then it started shooting up like 2 foot a year until it was blooming each season. But some of them just stay put, some of them like decay over time, and if they never either get that good growth later or shoot out a root sucker that shoots out some good growth, and they're basically useless, because you can't even use them really for grafting until you get some kind of vigorous trunk, whether it's a root sucker or whatever. Yeah, I just recently put these 3 fig cuttings like directly in this pot, this Palermo, and the other 2. I just put these guys in the more sun a few days ago, and man, look at the growth it's got just by putting it in the sun there. It's been in pretty heavy shade. Only one of them doesn't have a lot of growth on it, but the other 2 are doing amazing. Now these are the first set of those cherry plums that we put in the pot, the cuttings from when we grafted and stuff. And they say give them a pull, and if they don't move, that means they could potentially have roots on them. Even the ones that don't look great, are not pulling up. So that could be a good sign of root potential. If these guys root and survive, this could really change the game for swamp gardening, for these. You cannot get the chill hours to produce more rootstock here. You'd have to get seeds or plants elsewhere, for rootstock. But if you could do cuttings, because they will survive here, and if you can root those cuttings, that's it. You know, you got a wetlands rootstock for your plums and maybe other stuff. Look at this beauty here. Must be. Look at that. That's a great thing to me about having, you know, fallen trees and logs and raised beds and mycorrhizal beds, hugelkultur beds and all kinds of stuff like that. Having wild, slightly overgrown areas sometimes, you can get a lot of, you know, wildlife, skinks and snakes and, you know, mud and musk turtles will come out when it's drier and get under those logs and those piles of debris, branches and stuff like that. And a lot of people intentionally keep their yard sterile, you know, so that they don't have to deal with wildlife. But, you know, I guess that's up to you. But we like to see all these things. We're in another day, and we can see those buds turning into leaves. That one, not quite. That should be separating in the next few days and looking like this guy. So again, there's 3 possible buds. 2 that definitely are green and pushing growth. Here are some of the Gerber daisies that have survived from, you know, maybe 2 to 3 years. You can see that guy's fixing to start blooming. That guy shouldn't be too further until it starts producing some kind of blooms. No sun yet, but we need to keep, I guess, fertilizing and watering them. They're getting super dry up here, unfortunately, because of the drought. So I dumped one of these pigeon poop compost upside down just to see what's at the bottom. No earthworms. There are some springtails and a few, you know, there's definitely some little microfauna, I guess you would say, in there, but not too much. And it could be a combination of, we haven't had a lot of warm days and nights. We haven't had a lot of rain. Something to maybe inspire the earthworms to go from the ground deeper into the ground to shallow into the ground and into the holes, you know, the drainage holes in these buckets, and just get in there. But also, maybe this is too acidic too. Maybe we need to add some lime or something to it. The last one we made, we did a higher ratio of pigeon poop to wood, so there's way more pigeon poop in here. It's actually done a lot better job. It's not like, it's still wet. It's kind of like almost like peat moss or something. It seems to be breaking down a lot better. If I could go dig up, you know, a couple hundred worms, I would go just put them back in that concrete tumbler, add lime to it, and then just seed it with the worms and let them have at it. But even when I'm like getting into my old compost, there's ants in there. There's not a whole lot of earthworms right now. Probably just need that rain and warmer weather to pull them up. So it could be seasonal, you know, it's going to take longer for everything to compost just because the cold weather has kept the earthworms farther into the ground. And of course, like I said, the lack of rain. Kind of surprised this morning as we just came out, and that little scion wood from a mulberry, this multi-graft, 1, 2, 3, looks like we did 4, and looks like 3 of them took. That one there, this huge guy here, the smaller one here, and this, yeah, I've been questioning whether or not this scion wood piece was dead. It kind of darkened up, but I just took the growth from below it off because I seen it leafing out. I cannot tell what this was though. I'm gonna have to, the label is wrapped there, and it kind of wrapped over itself. And this boysenberry down here, I don't think made it. Label here tells me it did not come from Fruitwood Nursery. I think it came from Ding Dong's garden, so I don't know if I can you know, go check and see what this could be, or if I have to go through like hours of videos to try to see what I grafted where. All right, I'm looking at the orders here. So based on this list, it would have to be Galicia, Grover's Best, Kip Parker, Delightful, or possibly Shangri-La. But I think I just rooted the Shangri-La and didn't even try to graft. I'm not 100% sure. Let's see if we can try to see if we can find out what it potentially is, because anything else that has that original paper tag stuck around it, if I can figure out what they are, that means that definitely is not that one. It's like our Galicia mulberry actually is coming out. What I thought it would. Going back to this multi-grafted mulberry, I can now rule out that being Delightful, because I found another one that had a tag like that that was Delightful. So it's not boysenberry, it's not Delightful, it's not Wakisa or Wakisa. It is not, what is this again? Black Beauty, and it is not Pakistan. That leaves Kip Parker, Black Prince, Galicia, and what else? Grover's Best. So it has to be one of them. Okay, I forgot that Black Prince come from a different source, so that cannot be a Black Prince there. It's either Kip Parker, Grover's Best, or Galicia, I would think. Again, I think I just used the Shangri-La and didn't cut it, did not graft it. I think I just put it directly in the ground. So Kip Parker, Grover's Best, or Galicia. Okay, I found it. I figured it out. Looking back at like 3 or 4 videos back, this is a Grover's Best, and I did not think we had any make it, and we really didn't until it just started pushing this growth out here. So that is a Grover's Best. Awesome. Well, it's been a while. That Ziploc had shrimp in it, and it was hanging on this pawpaw only for like 2 or 3 days. And I found it on the ground, ripped up, and the shrimp are gone. So something got up here about 6-7 foot and took it down and ate it. So it is another morning, and as you can see, everything is nice and wet. No sunshine out here, lots of wind. It's just been sprinkling for who knows how long, possibly all night long. Plants, you know, this loquat's definitely perked up because it's kind of been droopy even after I watered it, you know, almost every day a little bit. There's nothing like that, you know, rain, that water from the sky to perk these plants up and make them a little bit more happy. As you can see, the elderberry flowers are starting to, or I should say the elderberries are starting to flower. So a couple little bad news updates. This sunflower pawpaw on the Tennessee pawpaw rootstock has died. I'll notice that because there's just a little green bud right there. And I did a scratch test at the scion wood piece that we grafted last year. Nothing, and I scratched it way down. It ain't scratching green until we're probably on that top 4 or so inches here. So at least it's trying to shoot a new bud out, and we can, you know, do something with this. We need as much material as we can get, I guess. For those of you that don't know, this is a sucker from a Tennessee mountain pawpaw seedling that has produced tons of flowers for us. That's the one that died last year for whatever reason, but it had suckers that still survived. And this is one of them. We pulled it out once it was 3 foot tall or so, did a pretty nice pruning on it. Probably should have did a graft lower, might have been better success, but we did 2 grafts. We had a graft somewhere maybe here, and then a graft here, 2 side veneer grafts. Both initially seemed to take. We even had, I think, an original branch from the pawpaw that, you know, died. Then this was alive. This top sunflower was alive. And now it's not. if we would have gave it away, planted it in the ground, you know, I don't know if it would have survived, but we were going to give this away to a local garden club, and everything just got delayed and delayed with our busy lives, our busy schedule. So I'm kind of glad we didn't give it to somebody that it just never came out this season, you know, because as you can see, there is no, it's you know, when these guys are alive, they have a little or a lot of flex. This guy's barely flexing, and they're easy to scratch, so you can't even get easily that bark off of there, and there's nothing there. It's just brown. But because this is a sucker from a mature tree, this should be considered a mature plant on its own. So maybe we'll just plant it somewhere nearby another flowering pawpaw that just doesn't have a pollinator, and maybe in a year or two this guy will be flowering like crazy too, or it might not make it at all. You know, they're hard to transplant. That's, you know, they have a reputation for being really hard to transplant and keep alive. Now this guy here was our grafted double G mayhaw that we did not put in the ground. See, we bought two, what was it, last year, year before? Can't remember. May have been really early last year. And we put one in the ground, and we were going to put this one in wetland zone 1 or thinking about it. But we kept it in the pot for the winter. Put it in, you know, shade a little bit from the drought in the summer, last summer. And too much drought, too much watering. I don't know what happened, but this guy died from the root, and it went up. You know, we seen like it wasn't really coming back out a couple months ago, and the branches were still scratching green. We tried to graft on like 2 pieces of the top, but it was probably too far gone. It's possible that maybe one of them will come out, but I doubt it. So kind of regretting not planting it in the ground, finding a place to put it. Yeah, $30 out the door. But, you know, I guess it wasn't that bad of a deal for how big these guys were. That, you know, a lot of nurseries probably would have charged a lot more for like a 5-foot grafted mayhaw. However, the good news is we can get double G scion wood this year, next year, and just graft it onto one of the many mayhaw suckers we have. And I'm sure in the next 10 or 20 years we're going to have dozens, if not hundreds, of suckers if we do not cut them down. So each one could be, you know, we're experimenting with medlars, Chinese hawthorns. You could put any kind of hawthorn on there, I guess, or just your named varieties like double G. So 2 bad things, I guess, lately. I kind of knew this mayhaw was going to be not coming back, at least during the last video or 2. Just didn't really want to touch the issue. I was hoping something somewhere, and I'm assuming that we won't get like root, like a sucker coming from the roots. It's possible. I haven't checked the roots to see if they're completely dead, but as I said, it seemed to die from the ground up. So again, the branches were green and the down there was not. It seems like that drought has really like messed up our mulberry harvest this year and everything. So everything is just, you know, there was some blooming, probably not heavy blooming. You know, some blooming on citrus, not heavy blooming on a lot of them. A lot of mulberries have fallen off to the ground. You know, the dwarf everbearing was the one that we mainly harvested from, and we hoped with all the experiments and grafting and different cultivars we've gotten over the years, and will continue to get at least for a little while longer, hopefully, that eventually we'll have such a high production rate that you know, even in times of drought, maybe we'll get a good enough harvest to make some pies or something like that. But look at this Wakisa growth here on this 4-in-1 mulberry. Every day it's getting more growth. You know, it's probably growing 2 inches a day or more. And we've been kind of treating it like that nurseryman talked about, giving it some nutrients, you know, grafted trees, nutrients. We were specifically talking about those persimmons to make them have almost 100% graft rate, although I don't see any sign of that happening or that being the reason. That doesn't mean it doesn't allow your grafted trees to get more growth or faster growth. I mean, look at that there. Look at this guy here. And even this Black Beauty, you know, Morris Niagara is known to be slow growing from what I can read. So that's got like, that's like a 16 or 17 inch stem there. Another probably 12 or 13 inch stem here. And just seeing the few that didn't get a lot of growth last season, that 4 seasons, we had like a Maui and probably 1 or 2 other ones that just froze because they didn't get enough length and diameter growth. So when those 22, 23 degree freezes happened, it just killed that little tender pieces, those little tender shoots off, and they either will not or probably will not recover at all. And I will say that, you know, that those little chestnuts that I bought last year did not get a lot of growth on them, those 2 seedlings I bought from the local nursery. But I looked at theirs, which were the same, from the same, you know, set of seeds or seedlings, and in that year they went from like 2.5 foot or whatever they were when I got them to like 7 foot or so. And mine stayed small while theirs grew big. So doing that like almost daily nutrient, you know, injections in their drip water system obviously does some good. So you have to know when to do it, and you have to know when to stop it, because you don't want green growth when a freeze is going to happen. So you have to know which, you know, month or whatever to stop the nutrients. But you do maybe need to have those nutrients to get those pieces, those newly grafted plants, enough diameter of growth, and maybe have them harden off before the first freeze happens. You know, I have no doubt that this Wakisa, you know, by the first freeze is going to be hardened off enough. Even if you got 2 foot of death because there's green at the top, everything else that browns, that hardens off, is going to be safe. If I would have known that, you know, we probably could have saved the 4 seasons, the Maui and the what is it, Hunza Black or whatever it is, and the 1 or 2 other ones, and we wouldn't have to rebuy scion wood this year, next year, or whatever. We've had some failures, obviously, but I am overall, I think, satisfied and happy with the successes, and I'm glad that I'm still continuing to learn. Even at the peak end of this soft closing, this is the last video, I think, before we start the new garden vlog season. So, you know, we're still experimenting a little bit. You know, we went back into the medlars, and we're trying again on mayhaw rootstock, on loquat rootstock. So there may, you know, we put them in a little bit heavier shade in some of them. We got some in pots so we can control the sun and shade and all. And, you know, where we put them on mayhaw, they, you know, I originally tried them on English hawthorn rootstock. They lived about a season, fruited, and that was it. They were done. Will they survive the summer? Will they survive into the winter? Will they survive into next spring? You know, yeah, there are 1,000 other things I could think of doing, but I don't have the time, the money, or resources. If I had a whole bunch of people, you know, permaculture farm people just volunteering their time, and just, you know, everybody sharing their seeds, sharing their this and that, you know, rootstocks, cuttings, you know, it could go faster and easier, but it's okay. I think this is one of the seasons where I really feel like we've got some stuff done. And maybe, just maybe, having those medlars on more soil moisture resistant rootstock could, you know, give us more knowledge about growing medlars and seeing if it's even possible long term to keep them alive in Florida. Here's just a quick look at some of those medlars we did. This one here is probably about 18 inches tall. This guy here's got about a 10 or 11 inch one, and then about a 5 or 6 inch one there. This one's still small, but it's a different, this is monstrous or something, so it's got some big giant leaves on it. Maybe it means monster leaf, I don't know. Here, which has probably about 12, 13 inches of side growth. Maybe we're not getting enough sun straight up, but probably need to stake those guys. This little guy here has like a little 1 or 2 inch one, and then about a 3 or 4 inch one, and another 3 or 4 inch one coming off of it. Let's just remember, about 2 years ago, we had 0 successes with persimmons. We had 0 successes with grafted mulberries. So, you know, we've come a long way, definitely. And, you know, a lot of times we look back and say, well, what do we have to show for it? Well, a lot of things are so not at that full growth, that full capacity quantity yet, you know, so these droughts really set us back with the citrus and the mulberries and probably other things as we get more and more things going. But in terms of getting a higher success rate, higher quantity of variety of different plants going and keeping them alive, you know, we have a bunch of little jaboticabas all over the place now that survive the winter. You know, sometimes, yeah, we put leaves over them and pine needles and stuff, but over time, we hope not to have to protect them at all. So whatever the strongest survives, that's just how it's going to be. And I think there's enough evidence to say there are probably many, not just a variety of cold tolerances with each individual seedling on not just jaboticabas, but white sapotes and everything. But there's also probably many microclimates where this area here is warm enough to keep these guys alive, even if 10 feet or 20 foot that way or 60 foot this way or 100 foot that way, it's too cold. So this is a good way to gauge where things can be successful. If you plant 50 or 30 or whatever jaboticabas in every single different area, you can try to figure out where they could grow, and you have some live, some die, then you've gained that knowledge. You've hopefully gained more things that could be productive in the future for your homestead or permaculture garden or whatever you want to call it. Where could we potentially focus in the future? You know, if I can root plum rootstocks, which it seems like it's possible or probable, that's going to let us go in another direction. But it also has me wondering if I can root pear rootstocks and stuff like that. So there are all types of European hybrid Asian pears that we haven't tried yet, or maybe we've tried on the wrong rootstocks. So if we can multiply rootstocks, then that's going to be a good thing. You know, we could say the same thing about persimmons, but we know it probably takes a while for an American persimmon figure out if it's a female or male. You know, will it, you know, how long does it take to mature, yada yada, produce fruit, get the seeds. That's going to be, I don't think persimmons root very easily. So that could be a longer term goal, to have your own harvestable seeds, but we can still buy 100 seeds at a time you know, on the internet for a decent price. And seeing that white sapotes take a pretty hard hit in the winter, you know, but they are capable of coming down from low or the roots. That has my, you know, the wheels are turning in my head saying, you know, if we can keep them alive, we will have to do a very, very low graft, like, and maybe even have to bury the graft or get it really close to the ground so that we can cover and protect the grafts during major freezes. And instead of having the grafts up high, because I graft high, low, and everywhere. As you can see with these medlars, you know, I'm 3 foot off the ground with that one. I'm probably 3 foot off the ground here, 3.5 foot here on this one. I'll graft anywhere. But, you know, these cold sensitive plants, you probably really do need to go low so you can cover them with, you know, whether it be blanket sheets, some kind of plastic, or just, you know, pile them full of leaves, maybe a little compost around them. Whatever it takes to keep them alive. Based on what I've heard other people say, they have trees that stay alive during these freezes. They just don't really have fruit or a lot of fruit. So in the best of circumstances, you may only get fruit during a very mild winter. But we will see. But we do have to keep them protected until they get probably a certain diameter of trunk, just like those mulberries, and to allow them to survive, those grafts and all, to survive the winter. Even if, you know, you come back from the roots, you're never going to have a graft. You know, your graft is going to die. Your scion wood piece is going to die. So I don't know how many seasons, if it's just 2 seasons, would harden it off or what. Or if you need to protect it for 3 or 5 years. Again, going back to low grafting as close to the soil as possible and protecting that graft at all costs. But we can implement that, you know, almost daily nutrient diluted plant feeding, you know, to whatever we want to get a lot of growth, whatever we want to harden off faster before the freezes come, and maybe that will help. All right, guys, I think that's it for the soft closing. I think we're officially done for the season. You guys take care until the next time.